They fired me with a smile, like I was just another file to close. But it led me to everything I didn't know I was capable of. My name is Claire, and this is the story of how I was silenced, underestimated, and fired, until the day they had to knock on my door and ask to sit at my desk. So grab your coffee and come with me. I still remember the way he looked at me when he said it, like I was disposable, like firing me WTAs as routine as taking out the trash. We've decided to move in a different direction, he said, his voice flat, rehearsed. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the rest. I just stood there, frozen in that sleek glass office, holding my sketchbook like a child clutches a blanket. I had poured everything into that company, every weekend, every late night, and now I was nothing more than a checkmark on his to-do list. It wasn't just the job I lost that day. It was my sense of direction, my security, my dignity. I walked out of the building with my box of things, past coworkers who suddenly couldn't make eye contact. The lobby felt colder, the air thinner. I kept my chin up until I reached the street. Then it all crumbled. I sat on a bench outside and cried until my throat ached. Not because I loved that job, but because I had no plan B, no safety net, just a little passion project I used to play with after hours. That little passion project was a design blog. Something I started out of love, never expecting it to go anywhere. Late at night, I'd post branding tips, mock-up breakdowns, color theory deep dives, things that made my heart race in a good way. My former boss once saw me working on it during lunch and scoffed. "You really think anyone's going to take you seriously with that amateur side hustle?" I laughed it off, but those words stuck. They burned. And now, they echoed louder than ever as I stared at the blank wall of my apartment. I wish I could say I bounced back the next day. I didn't. I spiraled. 4 weeks. I applied to jobs I didn't want, wrote cover letters that felt like lies, and replayed that awful meeting in my head like a broken record. My savings were dwindling, my confidence was shot, and I couldn't even look at a design program without feeling sick. I was angry, not just at him, but at myself, for letting that job define me, for giving someone like him the power to make me feel so small. One night, I opened my old blog just to shut it down, but something stopped me. A comment, buried under an old post. "Your work helped me land my first client. You have no idea how much you've taught me." I read it 3 times. Then I cried. But this time, not from pain, from something deeper. Gratitude, maybe hope. That night, I didn't close the blog. I redesigned it. I gave it a new name, a new voice, mine. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the tiniest spark of joy. It started small. A DM asking for a brand audit, an email inquiring about a logo. I wasn't sure how to price my time, how to act like a real business owner. But I figured it out. Every project I took felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I wasn't just designing. I was healing, building. I poured everything into each job like it was my last. And slowly word spread. Not fast, but steady. Enough to keep the lights on. Enough to start believing again. Meanwhile, I kept seeing him, my old boss, pop up on LinkedIn, posting articles like he was some kind of visionary. He had no idea I was rising. No idea that his rejection had lit the match under everything I was building. Part of me wanted to message him, to throw my growth in his face. But the wiser part of me knew the best revenge was silence and success. Let him see it when it's too late to matter. Still, I had no idea just how far it would go. Or that one day, he'd be the one sitting across from me, hat in hand, forced to say my name with respect. That day was coming. I just didn't know it yet. All I knew was that I had nothing left to lose. And sometimes, that's the most powerful place to start from. Because when you've already hit rock bottom, the only way left is up. And up, that's exactly where I was headed. The first time I opened Illustrator after the layoff, my hands were trembling. Not from excitement, from fear. It felt like I was staring at an old friend who reminded me of who I used to be. Someone confident, creative, someone who still believed her ideas mattered. But now, every blank canvas felt like a test I might fail. I kept thinking, What if I'm not good enough outside their system? What if they were right? That doubt, it sat on my shoulders like a weight I couldn't shake off. But I forced myself to draw. Not for clients. Not for approval. Just for me. One logo idea. One mood board. One sketch at a time. And in those quiet moments, I remembered why I fell in love with design in the first place. It was never about climbing a corporate ladder. It was about creating something beautiful out of chaos. That's what design is. And ironically, that's what I was doing with my life now, redesigning it from scratch. I started sharing my process again, piece by piece. A quick reel on Instagram. A behind-the-scenes story. A tweet that went viral out of nowhere. Fire designer rebuilds from rock bottom, one font at a time. I didn't expect the flood of DMs. People I didn't know thanking me for being honest. Others asking for tips, mentorship, even consultations. I wasn't ready for it, but I said yes. Every yes was terrifying, but also thrilling. Like I was stepping into something that had always been mine. Still, part of me hesitated to call it a business. It felt too big, too serious, like I wasn't allowed to take up that space. Who was I to act like a CEO? But then I remembered all the times I had shrunk myself to fit into roles that never deserved me. All the meetings where I was told to tone it down, to keep things professional, to not overshare. And now here I was, finally sharing everything. And the world wasn't turning away. It was leaning in. My apartment became my studio. My kitchen table, a conference desk. My coffee mug said Boss Babe, ironically at first. Then, not so ironically, I designed until my back ached. I cried over revisions. I celebrated every payment notification like it was a lottery win. I was working more hours than ever. But I was free. No fake smiles. No gatekeepers. Just me, my clients, and the art we created together. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Some nights I still had nightmares about being fired. I'd wake up sweating, hearing his voice say, "You don't belong in this world." But every time I shipped a project, got a glowing review, or saw my designs live on someone's brand, that voice got quieter. Replaced by others, clients who called me a lifesaver. Followers who said I inspired them. I was building more than a brand. I was building belief. In myself. In possibility. In something no one could take away again. Then came the email. Subject line. Corporate branding proposal inquiry. I almost deleted it, but something about the sender's name felt familiar. I opened it, and my heart stopped. It was from a coordinator at my old company, the one that let me go. They had seen my new portfolio through a LinkedIn post. They wanted a proposal. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Was this a joke? A trap? Or karma knocking? I didn't reply. Not yet. I needed to think. Not as the girl who got fired, but as the woman who now owned the room. I imagined his face if he found out. I could almost hear him scoffing. No way that's her. No way she built that. But she did. I did. And I wasn't the same woman who walked out with a box in her arms. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone he never saw coming. And maybe that was the real revenge. I didn't respond right away. I let that email sit in my inbox for 3 days, unread but fully read. You know what I mean. I read it 100 times in my head. I imagined every version of the story. The panic in their office, the disbelief when they saw my portfolio, the awkward meeting where someone had to admit they needed me. Me. The girl they tossed out like yesterday's ideas was now their best option. There was poetry in that. I kept wondering if he had seen it yet, my name on the proposal list, my logo in the footer. Did his stomach drop when they mentioned me? Did he argue? Try to block it? Or worse, did he pretend he didn't remember me at all? That would be just like him, rewriting history to suit his ego. But it didn't matter. Because this time, the power wasn't his. It was mine. And I had a decision to make. I finally replied with a single line. Happy to discuss. Let me know a good time. Short. Professional. Unshaken. My hands were shaking when I typed it, but no one had to know that. 2 hours later, I got the reply. A Zoom invite for Monday at 10 a.m. My heart dropped when I saw the meeting title. Design Strategy Consultation, Lead, Greg Hamilton. Greg. That was him. The same man who told me I was too emotional for leadership. The same one who said my ideas were cute, but not scalable. Monday came too fast. I dressed up, even though it was virtual. Not to impress him, to remind myself of who I'd become. Blazer, lipstick, hair tied back. Calm. In control. I sat at my desk 5 minutes early, sipping coffee like it was a ritual. And when the screen lit up and his face appeared, it took everything in me not to smirk. He looked older, tired, less untouchable. He blinked twice before speaking, as if he couldn't believe it was me. So, I guess you're the creative lead now, he said, trying to sound casual. I nodded. I am. Silence. Thick and awkward. He fumbled with his notes while I sat still, letting the silence speak louder than anything I could say. He finally cleared his throat and launched into the pitch. His company had rebranded. They wanted fresh vision. They were really impressed with my recent work. He said we a lot, but I could tell it was all coming from higher up. That's when the real twist landed. Toward the end of the meeting, Greg leaned in and said, "Just being transparent, this wasn't my idea. Our VP insisted. She saw your work and said, 'This is the kind of creative direction we need.'" He looked away when he said it. That single line, "This wasn't my idea," was the moment I realized this wasn't a job interview. It was a surrender, a silent admission that they needed what I had become, and that he had no choice. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw his words back at him. I didn't need to. My silence was louder than any "I told you so." I smiled politely, took notes, asked strategic questions. Like a pro. Like a woman who belonged at the head of the table. When the call ended, I didn't dance or scream. I just sat there, breathing it all in. The full circle feeling. The weight lifting. The knowing. They could never take my voice again because now it was being hired. That night, I updated my site's client's page and added their logo. Just like that. No asterisk. No explanation. Just another brand trusting my vision. The irony was delicious. But the victory? It wasn't in the logo. It was in who I had become along the way. I used to dream of getting back at him. Of proving him wrong. But now, I didn't need him to be wrong. I just needed to be right about me. And I was. Walking back into that building felt like stepping onto a movie set where I used to play the extra. But this time I was the lead. The marble floors, the cold lighting, the corporate hush, it was all the same. Except me. I had heels clicking with purpose, a portfolio that didn't need explanation, and a quiet fire in my chest. At the elevator, I caught my reflection in the metal doors. Strong posture. Calm eyes. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Greg was already in the conference room when I arrived. He stood when I walked in, more out of habit than respect. "You didn't have to come in person," he said, half a smile forced onto his lips. "We could have handled this over Zoom." I shrugged. Some things are better face to face. I wanted him to see it. All of it. What I'd built. Who I'd become. The contrast between who I was when he fired me and who I was now. The meeting was all business. Contracts. Timelines. Deliverables. I led it like I'd been doing this forever. He tried to challenge a few creative ideas, and I calmly redirected. That approach didn't work last time, remember? I said at one point, gently. A flicker of embarrassment crossed his face. I didn't twist the knife. I didn't need to. He was already bleeding pride. Every word I spoke reminded him, she's not the same. And you underestimated the wrong woman. At one point, I laid out brand strategy slides. My company slides. My vision. My language. I saw his eyes scanning the details, his brow creasing. He looked like someone trying to find the catch. Some way this wasn't real. But it was. I was sitting at the same table where I once swallowed my ideas to avoid being called difficult. And now, they were paying to hear me speak. And they were taking notes. Then came the moment I'll never forget. His boss, the VP who requested me, joined the meeting briefly. She smiled, shook my hand firmly, and said, "We're excited to see what your agency brings. It's exactly the energy we've been missing." I thanked her, feeling the pulse of validation wash over me. She turned to Greg and added, "Glad you followed through. Shows real growth." He didn't respond. His jaw clenched, and I felt it, that shift. I wasn't chasing his approval anymore. He was chasing relevance. As she left, the silence lingered. Greg finally broke it. "You've done well for yourself," he said, voice low, almost reluctant. I nodded. I had no choice. He stared at the table. No snark, no ego, just silence. For the first time, I saw him not as a villain, but as a man outpaced by someone he tried to hold back. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. I had outrun the weight he once placed on me. We wrapped up the meeting. He stood to shake my hand, this time with real respect. "Good luck," he said, avoiding my eyes. I held his hand for a second longer than necessary and replied, "You too. You'll need it." Not a threat, not a jab, just the truth. The industry had changed. I had changed. And whether he liked it or not, I was no longer behind him. I was ahead. As I left the building, sunlight hit my face like a spotlight. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just breathed. Deeply. Fully. I had walked into the fire and come out golden. That glass office no longer had power over me. That job didn't define me. That man didn't own my story. I had written a new chapter. And now, it was time to turn the page. To the part where I build an empire. It didn't happen overnight. There was no viral moment, no big break. Just one client telling another. One post getting reshared. One small win stacked over another until it became something undeniable. Within a year, my agency had a waiting list. We rebranded startups, consulted Fortune 500 teams, and led national campaigns. I stopped introducing myself as a designer. I was now a founder, a strategist, a force. And for once, that didn't feel like an exaggeration. What surprised me the most wasn't the money or the clients, it was the recognition. Podcasts wanted to hear my story. Design schools asked me to guest lecture. I was nominated for awards I never knew existed. People were quoting my posts, using my case studies, referencing my methods. Every time I opened my inbox, there was something new. A partnership offer, an interview request, a thank you message from someone I'd never met. The same voice they once called too much was now everywhere. I remember standing on a stage in New York, speaking at a Women in Tech conference. The lights were bright, the room packed. I told them about the layoff, about Greg, about the blog that saved me. People laughed, cried, clapped. When I stepped down, a woman in her 20s hugged me and whispered, "I thought I was the only one." That moment hit harder than any paycheck ever could. I wasn't just building a business. I was building belonging. And that was priceless. But success never erased the scars. It only taught me how to wear them with pride. Still, some days I'd think back to the early pain. The way it felt to be dismissed, overlooked, laughed at. Those memories didn't haunt me anymore, but they grounded me, reminded me of the cost. The journey. The girl who sat crying on a bench with a box of shattered dreams. I owed her everything. Because she didn't give up. She sketched through the doubt. And because of her, I now walked into boardrooms with the calm of someone who had already survived the worst. The funniest twist came when one of Greg's former coworkers emailed me, not knowing our history, and said, "We've heard amazing things about your agency. Greg used to speak so highly of your potential." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Of course he did. The past always rewrites itself when the present becomes too loud to ignore. But I didn't correct the story. Let him take credit if he wants. I was too busy writing the next chapter. We opened a second office. Hired a full team. I trained other designers who reminded me of myself, bright, scrappy, overlooked. I made it my mission to make space for voices that didn't fit the mold. Every success felt sweeter, knowing how hard won it had been. We weren't the biggest agency out there, but we were becoming the most respected, because we led with soul, with story, with fire. Some clients still hesitated when they saw we were woman-owned, independent, untraditional. But I didn't bend to fit their boxes. I made new ones. And the ones who couldn't see that, we let them walk. That was the biggest shift. I no longer chased approval. I curated alignment. My business wasn't built on desperation. It was built on purpose. And that kind of foundation, it doesn't crack. One afternoon, while reviewing proposals in my office, I paused to look around. The framed prints, the scent of fresh coffee, the laughter from the team in the other room. It hit me like a wave. I had done it, not in spite of being fired, but because of it. Because being let go gave me back to myself. And I had used every ounce of that second chance to build something no one could take from me again. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a beginning. They invited me back as a keynote speaker. Not Greg. The company. The same company that let me go without a second thought. The irony was delicious. A full-circle moment gift-wrapped in corporate letterhead. I almost said no. I didn't need validation anymore. But then I remembered her, the girl with the box. And I knew I had to do it. Not for them. For her. For every woman who's ever been told she wasn't enough, only to rise higher than anyone expected. The morning of the event, I wore the same blazer I had on the day I got fired. Not out of bitterness, out of ceremony. A personal reminder of how far I'd come. I parked on the same street, walked the same steps, but everything felt different now. Not because the building changed, but because I had. My footsteps were steady, my chest open, my voice ready. This time, I wasn't here to ask for a seat at the table. I was here to stand behind the mic. The room was packed. Greg was there, sitting in the second row. He didn't make eye contact, but I felt his presence like static in the air. I didn't address him. I didn't need to. My story wasn't about him anymore. It was about what happens after the fall. I told them everything. The layoff, the fear, the first blog post, the first client, the first time I believed I could lead. I didn't sugarcoat the struggle, but I didn't dwell there either. I showed them the blueprint of becoming. As I spoke, I saw nods. I saw tears. I saw young women taking furious notes, as if every word was oxygen. And when I ended with, sometimes losing everything is how we find ourselves, the applause hit me like a wave. Not loud, deep, real. I stepped off that stage lighter. Not because I had proved anything, but because I had released something. That pain, that doubt, that old story. After the event, a new intern approached me. She looked nervous. I just wanted to say, I hope I can build something like you one day, she said. I smiled and replied, you already are. Just don't wait for someone else to believe in you first. Her eyes widened, like no one had ever told her that before. And maybe no one had. That's the part no one talks about. How powerful it is to be believed in. Even just once. Even just by yourself. Before I left the building, I stopped by the lobby one last time. I sat on the same bench where I once cried like the world was ending. I closed my eyes and let the memory pass through me. Not to dwell, but to honor it. That bench was sacred ground. That version of me didn't know she was planting seeds. But she was. Every tear, every doubt, every what now, it all led here. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small gift box. Inside it was a card, handwritten. On the front, to the next one who gets told they're not enough. I slipped it under the bench and walked away. Maybe no one would ever find it. Or maybe someone would, right when they needed it most. Either way, I left it behind as a whisper. A reminder. A sign that losing your place can be how you find your purpose. Because I once walked out of this building with nothing but a cardboard box. And now, I have an empire to my name. If this story touched you, click like and subscribe. And if you can, support this channel with a coffee. The link is in the first pinned comment. Your support helps this channel grow and brings more stories like this to life.